Hey everybody, now that I am out of debt, I'm going to take the channel in a bit of a different direction. I'll still do finance videos every now and then, especially as I'm building up my emergency fund and there's a medical bill that I'm kind of holding off on because I want to settle it. I want to make a video about that. But right now, I want to do another interview. I would like to interview my Spanish teacher, Beto. I met him on the website iTalki, and there's a link below if you want 10 free dollars for the website. Learning Spanish has become my main hobby, and it's actually a pretty cheap hobby to have. Over the past 2.5 years, I've taken weekly lessons with Beto, and my Spanish skills have gone from like here to here to here, and I feel totally comfortable now speaking with native speakers in Mexico or Colombia or any of the students that I had or any of their parents. So we're going to talk about him being a Spanish teacher. We're going to talk about his background because he's actually a musician, and we're going to talk about what it's like being bilingual and living in Mexico. Before we get started, if you can go ahead, look down at that button right there and hit subscribe. That would help my numbers and my statistics out immensely. I was looking at my channel analytics and it shows that over half the people that watch my video are not subscribed. So if you could go ahead, hit subscribe, then I can quit spamming my Facebook. This is my interview with Beto. Beto, it is good to finally talk to you, at least in this setting. And I realize that even though I've known you for 2.5 years, this will actually be our longest conversation in English.
Yes, it will. It's kind of weird.
Yeah. Yeah, we've just done in Spanish with like the few English corrections, but
Yeah. Well,
so I'm intrigued to hear your English. I don't know. I know that you're fluent, but it's interesting. You know, I've never spoken to you in English extensively.
Yeah.
So one of the things that excites me about talking to you is that you're super multifaceted. As you know, you guys can see, he's got like an electronic drum kit in the background. He's got a nice fancy microphone because he's a super famous YouTuber.
Super famous.
Can you just tell the viewers like what you do and a little bit about like your elevator pitch of who you are?
Well, okay. My name is Robert. And I'm a musician, but I'm also a Spanish teacher or language teacher because I've taught English before. But that's mostly what I do now is teach languages. Like I do iTalki lessons, and I also have a podcast where we teach people about like Mexico. It's Spanish, but it's also about culture because a lot of people want to know more about Mexican culture. So yeah, that's mostly what I do. I don't do a lot of music nowadays. I used to, but now I just, I like a lot of stuff. I like music. I like languages. Yeah. So right now that's what I do. But yeah, I do hold a degree in music performance. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that initially like kind of attracted me to your profile was on your intro video. I could see the drums and the instruments, and then through us talking, I learned that you were a classically trained musician. You've talked about it in your podcast before. I'm kind of interested about your music education background, like growing up in school. What did music look like in school, and then how did you kind of decide to do percussion performance?
Oh, well, I get my first interaction with music was actually when I lived in the States. When I was living in the States, I don't know, I guess I kind of grew up in the States, in Florida, actually. And my dad got me piano lessons, which I hated. I didn't want to learn piano. I hated piano.
Same.
Yeah. I was like, why? And, but yeah, I had, I think like 5 lessons, but I didn't like it. I actually wanted to play the guitar. And then about 10 years later, when I was in middle school in Mexico, I started playing the guitar because my brother had one because our school had a music class. So music class, we didn't really learn even how to read music. It's just like learning songs. Yeah. Just like play it, put your finger here, like pluck the strings. It wasn't really music, but. And so I played guitar for 3 years when I was in middle school. And then I started playing drums because, well, all my friends played guitar and we wanted to have a band. And so I was like, okay, I'll learn drums. I like the drums. I like Blink-182 a lot. Travis, he was like my hero. Travis Barker. Yeah. So then I finished high school. I think I played with him like for 3 years, which actually Hector was in the band.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he was the bass player.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So yeah, we've known each other for like 15 years now. So and then when I finished high school, I decided that music was the only thing I really liked. I didn't really like anything else. I hated school. I always hated school. So yeah, I went to college to study music performance here in Veracruz. And it was kind of weird because, you don't really study drum set in college. You study classical. You
Yeah.
study timpani and
Mallets.
mallet, yeah, marimba, vibes, xylophone, all that stuff.
Dude, what was that like when you got to your like classes and they're like, all right, we need a marimba solo, and you're like, I do like drums. Did you have to like learn on the fly?
Yes, yeah. Because okay, they asked me, okay, can you play the snare drum? Because that's important. I mean, you have to do like buzz rolls and rudiments.
Yeah,
I'm like,
rudiments.
yeah,
Yeah,
I can play snare drum. I can play snare drum. They're like, okay, you have they said tienes buenas manos, which means you have good
yeah. Good
hands.
hands. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, you have good hands, so you have potential to be a good marimba player. So yeah, I just learned it. I just learned it, learning like the basics, like the 4 mallet technique, which is so hard. Marimba is a really hard instrument to play. Yeah, but yeah, so I did 8 years because in Mexico it's 8 years typically if
For
you
an
want to be a
undergrad?
music performance. So I did 8 years. I learned marimba, timpani, all that stuff, triangle, snare. But I never. I mean, I enjoyed it, but it was never my thing. I always wanted to be a drummer
Yeah.
because to me, and I played with some orchestras, but to me, like the percussionists are always like sitting, like they're always like this,
Just
waiting.
counting the rest,
Like,
just
yeah,
counting.
just counting. And then it was like, okay, one note, and then that's it. So I enjoyed it, but it wasn't really my thing. So yeah, so I graduated and I needed a job, and as you know, it's hard to find a decent paying job as a musician
As
or
a
a
musician, especially
performing musician. Yeah,
percussionists at
yeah,
that.
percussionist. Yeah. So I and I had also taught English like part time when I was in college. So
Yeah.
I said, maybe I can teach online. Maybe somebody wants to learn English online. Somebody living in Mexico or Latin America. It never crossed my mind that somebody would want to learn Spanish living in the U.S. I never thought of that. I
Okay.
always
So
thought maybe, yeah.
no, keep going.
No, I always thought, okay, everybody wants to learn English. Like, who wants to learn Spanish? Who cares about Spanish? English is the main language, right? And then and then people were contacting me like, hey, can you teach me Spanish? I'm like, well, I don't know the grammar, but I can help you. Like I can tutor you. And then, yeah, gradually I started learning more about what's this subjunctive stuff and perfect tense and the preterite, you know.
Dude.
And then, yeah. And then, yeah, here I am now.
So how did you stumble on iTalki?
I think I just Googled like English lessons, teach English online. That's it.
Yeah.
And I think this was the first one, iTalki.
Yeah, I Googled learn Spanish,
Yeah.
and it was like one of the first, and it kept on coming up in like blog post after blog post after blog
Yeah.
post. And
Yeah. Yeah.
you're the only teacher that I ever even like gave a try to. You're the
Really?
dude. It's true.
Wow. Okay.
So, okay, so you're doing your undergraduate thing. You start teaching lessons. When did you realize that like teaching lessons was going to be sustainable? How long did it take for you to build up that lesson base where you're like, I'm primarily a lesson teacher now?
I think about 1 year, I would say, because I was having more and more lessons. Then I have I have like 40 lessons a week, 40 people, 40 students that want to learn
Yeah.
Spanish. Wow. I'm like, actually, I don't have to get another job. I could just do this. And since it's so flexible and I don't have to drive anywhere, I could also have time for music, practicing. I had a band like 2 years ago. So it was, yeah, I liked it. I still like it a lot. Yeah.
A couple of videos ago, I interviewed a freelance percussionist, and they were talking about how it's a hustle, whether you're freelance anything, right? So you're a
Yeah.
freelance percussionist, obviously, but mostly a freelance English teacher. Before we kind of talk about the pros and cons of
Yeah.
bilingual and stuff like that, can you just talk about like the hustle of being a freelance person and what that's like? Because you've got a lot of you got your hands on a lot of different pies right now, right? So
Yeah.
what's the hustle? What's it like?
Well, I think it's just, the hard part, and I honestly, if I'm honest, I don't find it that hard. I think it would be harder for me to have a job with like a boss. And so I think what most people don't like about freelancing is that you have to be on top of everything, like time and taxes and all that stuff. But to me, it's just like, okay, I say I'm going to work from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. I'm always working. Like my girlfriend says I'm a workaholic, but I guess, yeah. It's just being organized with your time. saying, okay, I have these lessons in the morning, and then I'm going to practice from 11 to 12, and I'm going to go to the gym at this time, like using a calendar, even though I don't really have to, but I'm always using a calendar to see, okay, what's next? What do I got to do? Okay. Always. But I mean, for me, it was pretty easy, if I'm honest.
So a lot of my former students from Houston still watch, and many of them are bilingual.
Yeah.
What would you tell them about growing up as mostly Mexican Americans, about being bilingual, keeping their culture, staying up on their Spanish?
Yeah.
What thoughts do you have about that and growing up being bilingual?
Well, I mean, it has pros and cons, being bilingual, because usually when you're bilingual, something happened to you. Like for me, I grew up in the States. Like
Yeah.
I lived 6 years in the States in Florida. So I mean, the pros are that I don't need, I mean, the internet is in English. If you know English, you can learn whatever you want to learn. I don't have to worry about finding, Spanish versions of a book or
Mm-hmm.
translations or subtitles or whatever. And I can also teach Spanish to a beginner, complete beginner. But the downside is that I don't know a lot of the popular, like Mexican popular culture stuff, like some TV shows that everybody knows about. So sometimes I'm with a group of friends and they're talking about some joke. I'm like, I don't get it. I don't get that. But I can talk about Lizzie McGuire and Seinfeld and stuff.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. But I think just try to always be learning as much as you can. Like, try to focus on your weaker language. Like if you're weaker in Spanish, focus on Spanish. Try to only use Spanish when you can. If English is your weaker language, then yeah, try to do as much in English.
Well, on the flip side, I now teach basically a whole group of students that only speak English. And what
Wow.
advice because they're all, all my white kids. What
Yeah.
advice would you have to all my current students who basically only speak English? And what are the pros to learning that second language?
Well, I mean, if you live in Texas or California or the West Coast, I think learning Spanish it's like it just opens up a bunch of possibilities to communicate with people and just learn more about other cultures, especially since we're neighbors, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
not. I think I would be really curious to find out if I had a neighbor and I don't know anything about him. I don't know anything about him, his language, the food, the culture. Because a lot of Americans, they know about Mexican food. I know that. But try to, you don't have to be fluent, but I think it really helps to learn just the basics, just the basics. I think, especially, like I said, especially if you live near the border,
Yeah.
Texas.
And it's more and more, it's creeping its way up,
Yes, it is. It is. It is. Yes, it
I
is.
mean, for example, this morning I was at my parents' house and they had some people doing yard work. They spoke Spanish, but I felt totally comfortable just like hopping in the
Yeah.
backyard, talking to them and saying, "Hey, my dog's out here, just watch out," this and that. And there was
Yeah.
there was no awkwardness. The language
Yeah.
didn't have to get in the way.
Yeah, and that's what I tell people here. Why don't you learn English? Because a lot of people here, they don't want to learn English. Because like, oh no, it's too hard. Why? And sometimes they go to the States to visit family, and everybody speaks Spanish, so they're like, why should I learn? But still, I'm like, it's good to just to learn in general.
I would
Learn
say
as
my
much.
favorite thing has been like learning about all the culture. I've really
Yeah,
enjoyed your podcast. No
yeah,
Italki has tons of culture that I learned about, and
yeah, yeah,
it's the
yeah,
culture swap too. Super informative.
yeah, yeah.
Speaking about culture, one of my students from Houston, his name is Bernardo. He's actually
Okay.
like a super awesome soccer player and a tuba player, and he wants to know what you think are some of the biggest cultural differences between Latin America and the United States.
I would say the biggest one is family. I always like, and people tell me that all the time, like, oh, Mexican people, they family is so important. It's more important than building wealth or, your job, your profession. So I think that's the main one. A lot of people, at least here in Mexico, because people tell me, Mexicans work so hard in America. They're always working. But it's weird because here in Mexico, it's more like people, they work, but it's only just okay, just to get paid and spend time with my family. That's the main thing. So I think that's the main cultural difference, is that people value family more.
And
Being
when
with
you say family,
friends.
do you mean like
Yeah.
just the immediate family or like the extended family? Or like the
extended.
whole thing, right?
The whole family. Yeah, yeah. Grandparents, uncles, aunts, everything, cousins, you know. I think that's the main one. Yeah, family. A lot of people, they never move. Like, for example, I think you told me. Well, no, your parents live in Texas, but
Yeah, we live in
some,
Texas, but I was
yeah,
born in Minnesota. So like I don't have any extended family in Texas.
exactly.
I
Yes,
see them
yes,
maybe once a year, maybe once every year and a half or so,
yeah,
if that.
yeah,
But in
yeah.
Mexico, not the case.
Not the case. I mean, it does happen, but not often. Most people are
Right.
like, okay, this is where I was born. I was born here, maybe Puebla or Veracruz. So this is where I'm going to live for the rest of my life because this is where my family lives. My brothers and sisters, my grandparents. So I think that's, and also, you know, the hustle lifestyle that Americans have. It's not a thing down here. It's really not. And it's weird because I know that Mexicans that go to the US, they have that lifestyle,
Yeah,
always
yeah, yeah.
hustling, but not here. It's very different. Very, very different. Yeah.
Interesting. I didn't even
More
think
like
about
laid
that.
back. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, maybe because they have that hustle mentality that they want to go to where the hustle is, where they can hustle.
Probably. They're like, okay, if I go to the States and I work really, really hard, I can live the American dream, you know? And yeah, yeah. In Mexico, it's not going to happen, I think, for the most part.
I had several students in Houston who said that they were like their parents lived in Mexico and had like maids and multiple
Yeah.
cars, and then moved to America to have what we would consider low-paying jobs because of
Yeah.
the idea of a better opportunity.
Yeah. 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 It's
Very
true.
interesting.
It's true. Yeah. Yeah. It's just, and I think, you know, some people like that lifestyle, the hustle lifestyle, some others don't. I think it's fine. I mean, I have friends who they're not, they don't, they could work more and make more money, but they're like, why? I have enough to live.
Interesting.
I have my friends. I'm happy. Yeah. So I think those are the main two differences: the family part and also the lifestyle, the hustle lifestyle. Yeah.
Okay, so Beto, before we leave,
Sure.
like I said, I do have several of my students from Houston who are fluent in Spanish and um, love the Mexican culture. It's where their family's from, all that stuff. Can you give a quick plug for your YouTube channel and just kind of explain what that's about? 'Cause, I think there's some that might be
Oh,
interested in that.
sure, sure, sure. So yeah, if somebody's interested in learning about Mexico and Mexican Spanish, yeah, check out the podcast because that's where all of our episodes are. It's called No Hay Tos, Nohaytos, and that actually means like it's an expression. It means like there's no problem, like no worries, something like that in Mexican slang, or it's a Mexican expression. And you could also find us on YouTube, but we don't. Not all of our episodes are on YouTube yet. They will be, but you know it takes time to edit all the videos and stuff. But yeah, yeah, we have a little bit of everything, grammar and expressions, and we talk about, you know, just whatever, current affairs, news, whatever
Yes.
just happening at the moment.
There's a brilliant analysis of Seinfeld in the past tense a
See,
week
that's
or
what
so ago.
see, that's what I'm talking about. Like Seinfeld. I'm thinking of Seinfeld. When I'm thinking, okay,
Always.
I know Seinfeld and I want to teach Spanish. How do I put those two things together? All right, I'll do the marine biologist. Yeah.
Well,
So,
Beto, thank
so
you.
yeah.
Thank you for your time. It was super interesting. I hope that your perspective about being bilingual and being a classically trained musician and living elsewhere, I hope that that perspective helps some of my students. I hope that my viewers find it interesting. I know that I could talk to you for hours. I find you super interesting. And
Oh,
I'm
thanks.
mostly just happy that you didn't correct any of my verb tenses this conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, thanks for having me, Caleb. And also, congratulations on paying off your debt.
Oh yes, I'm so
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah.
I made my August budget, and in August is when I've given myself money to start donating. So I'll become a Patreon
Cool.
supporter of No Hay Tos in
Oh,
August.
thanks.
I
Thanks,
cannot
Caleb.
wait.
Yeah,
So
cool. Cool. All right,
all
Caleb.
right,
So, hablamos
yeah.
pronto. All right.
See, la
Yeah.
próxima semana. Adiós.
Bye.
Bye. Well, there you have it. That was my interview with Beto, iTalki teacher, musician, bilingual podcast YouTuber extraordinaire. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I'm looking to take this channel in a new direction, just kind of create some new content. Got some new ideas coming up. If you have any ideas or suggestions for a video, maybe you've got a financial question, go ahead and comment below. And as always, thanks for watching.